What is up, everyone? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are here, of course, to discuss the last UFC event of the year. We're back at the UFC Apex. Obviously, last week we was in Vegas, albeit in T-Mobile Arena. Sold out crowd, of course, at UFC 282. But we're back at the Apex in Vegas. And it's somewhat... Obviously, there's a lot of reflection going on because we're at the end of the year for the UFC. And the predominant, most of the organisations, in fact, we've got Bellator and CageWise, of course, happening on New Year's Eve. But the premier organisation tonight, runs off into the new year with its last event. Of course, it's a middleweight clash between Jared Cannonier and Sean Strickland. But it is missing that sort of buzz. Of course, it's not the card of the pay-per-view, and we see this a lot now, especially in the COVID era. The last 2-3 years, the pay-per-views are stacked, which means predominantly the fight nights either side of that tend to be a little bit more lackluster. Some of the fights that you probably would have seen that would have been on that main card, or even the prelims last week would probably have been on this card had it been in a Jacksonville or somewhere like that, more on the road with a sold out crowd. And that's okay. That's the business model of the UFC. The UFC need to recoup their money on the pay-per-views at the moment, but of course next year that's all seemingly going to change. Of course, there's about 3 or 4 at the Apex to start things off, but predominantly the UFC are going to be on the road next year, which is good for us. Because obviously when it's sold out, there's always that little bit more buzz, the cards are a little bit better, and the product's a little bit better. Of course, during the pandemic, it was suitable. But right now, I think the Apex has predominantly run its course. If we're there once a month, it's okay. But if you're there 2-3 times a month, it's a little bit... It doesn't get you excited, especially when the cards are on... like for tonight, for example, it's perfect. It's 9 p.m. start for early prelims, 10-12 in the UK. For the main card, 12 a.m. Main card starts. But when that card starts at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. and you're in Europe and you're in the UK and you know you're going to be up till 5, 6 in the morning, this card, you couldn't stay up till 5 and 6 in the morning. I mean, we're going to because, we enjoy the sport and, there's a lot on the line. But your more casual audience, your audience that's more likely to flick through the channels and find it, they're not going to wait up till 6 a.m. for this card. So it's a good job from the UFC for making the time as it is. Of course, it's on the ESPN Plus and at the Apex, so they have more dictation and direction as to when they put that card on, and that's fine. It's a good card. It's a good main event. Good co-main event also with obviously Arman Tsarukyan and Damir Ismagulov, two obviously lightweight prospects coming up in the co-main event, and it's been a good year. Of course, we'll do an all-round review of the year in the next coming weeks. We'll do top 5, etc., fighter of the year, of course. So do make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow. Those will predominantly be on YouTube, so if you're watching on Facebook, do go over to the YouTube channel CageChat MMA and subscribe on there for all that content. Of course, as I said, we've got CageWise coming up. But also, make sure to go follow us at CageChat MMA across all socials also. But let's get into tonight's main event. Of course, it's Jared Cannonier versus Sean Strickland. Now, these two are some within that pack that are best of the rest in this middleweight division. I think we've got Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker that are comfortably, 2 and 3. Because obviously, Alex Pereira is now the champion and number 1 and the king of this middleweight division, which is good for some of these guys that are fighting and the fights that are coming up, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. But we know where Israel Adesanya is. We know where Robert Whittaker is. Obviously, Alex Pereira, of course, he did get fast-tracked to that title, and of course, he'd beaten Adesanya before, and that, we're not going to take anything and discredit away from it. But he's not yet been tested against the elite in the Robert Whittakers of this division. The Marvin Vettori is the Jared Cannoniers of this division, so to speak. Although I think, the way he thought Adesanya, maybe, not to go MMA math, maybe that image and that fight, how that fight played out, maybe we can see the conclusions already coming forward as to how Alex Pereira would fare against the likes of Cannonier and Marvin Vettori and Paulo Costa. Robert Whittaker is an interesting one, because obviously Robert Whittaker does have a good wrestling base. That's the Cannonier, in fact. And Vettori has good grappling also. So that would be interesting. But these are the best of the rest. Obviously, I'd put Marvin Vettori in there, Paulo Costa, Jared Cannonier. I think Imavov's coming up. You obviously got the the Duplessises of this world. They're coming up at the moment. They will catch up within the next 1 month to this division, maybe even 6 months. I thought we'll see Duplessis. Obviously, Roman Dolidze also I put in that category, and we'll have a look at the rankings in a short while. But this is a good fight. Obviously, Cannonier, coming off the back of that loss to the champion Adesanya, wasn't the best performance from him. Of course, when you step into with Adesanya, unless your name's Alex Pereira, and now Diablo Hodas, of course, you've lost to him in an MMA environment, and that's absolutely fine. I remember what I said was correct. Unless so how much do you take away from that Jared Cannonier performance against Adesanya, against a champion who was dominant and had been dominant up until November of this year? He didn't come up with the best game plan. Obviously, the champ or the then champ, had been in those situations. Had been in there with Yoel Romero. He'd been the distance with Robert Whittaker, etc. And it felt like he was almost coasting, and it didn't work to the point he was getting the flack because he was making the challengers look somewhat normal in his defense. And Jared Cannonier is far from normal. He's an explosive character. He's an interesting fighter to watch because he comes across as this sort of this very sort of methodical character, for want of a better phrase. The way he speaks, the way he acts, and then once he gets in there, he's absolutely ferocious. And he is one of the best of the rest. He's only lost to Robert Whittaker and Adesanya in this division. Of course, he's done it in 3 divisions also. Knockouts at heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight. And that is something that I think Sean Strickland should be worrying about. And especially with Sean Strickland, coming off the back of that loss to Alex Pereira, where he did get knocked out. And, I think the same could potentially happen tonight. Do I think it happens as quickly? No. But if Sean Strickland leaves his chin in the open, like he did against Alex Pereira, on the same night, of course, as Cannonier and Adesanya fought, Sean Strickland's going to get blown away. Just because, again, it's only been 5 months since that damage. What's his chin like post Alex Pereira? What is it like post Alex Pereira knockout? We're going to find that out tonight. We know Sean Strickland's tough. We know the character he is. And that makes this fight a really interesting fight to preview and to see what's coming up. Obviously, Cannonier, prior to that Adesanya beat Derek Brunson. Of course, a very good first round between the two of them. Obviously, Derek Brunson got a heavy concussion from an elbow, I believe, against Jared Cannonier. And that was the beginning of the end for him. Good win for him. He beat Calvin Gastelum by unanimous decision. He's got wins over Jack Hermansson, Anderson Silva. Remember, he got booed out of Brazil at UFC 237 because of a knee injury to Anderson Silva. He's lost to Jan Blachowicz, brother Teixeira, Dominic Reyes, so they're all title contenders. 2 former champions and a title contender in the light heavyweight division. So he's only lost to the very best that he's come up against. And of course, he's 38 years of age, come towards the end of the latter parts of his career. But he needs to win tonight to potentially get back into that title picture. As we mentioned, Alex Pereira is now the champion, so everyone who's fought Israel Adesanya now has a fresh journey to the champion potentially. It's difficult. Whittaker is the number 1 contender. He's got to fight Paulo Costa, although Paulo Costa keeps putting tweets out about the contract situation, so we don't know about that. But Whittaker beats that. I think my Adesanya, the fan of Adesanya and Simon says, I would say to Adesanya, let Whittaker take that fight first and see how that goes. You've been a very dominant champion. You've got 2 wins over Whittaker. If Whittaker beats Paulo Costa, let Whittaker and Pereira, go at it in June, July. You can sit on the sidelines. You've been a dominant champion. You've almost got a guaranteed title shot when you come back. So take some time off. Heal up what you need to heal up, because he said some quite interesting things at the post-fight press conference. So maybe he's got some injuries to heal up and some health issues that he needs to clear up first, which I'd determine he does. Now he's not the champion. Enjoy the work he put in over the last 3 years. So yeah, that's how I'd play the picture if I was Adesanya. But of course, he was 3 minutes away from beating Alex Pereira, so maybe he just wants to jump back in there and try it one more time. He is a gamer. He's a bit of a mental case of that, and I think he enjoys the fact that he can keep coming up against Alex Pereira and trying to beat that code and beat that game and beat that level. And I think that probably eats away at him, and he is a little bit crazy like that. I think he wants to get that one back, and if it takes him 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 opportunities to do it, I think he would do it and keep signing up for that task. But now is where, the new contenders start to arise. Again, Whittaker and Adesanya is right there. Obviously, if Paulo Costa beats Whittaker, that would be an interesting sort of mix up in the division. Obviously, Paulo Costa, a former title challenger himself, that would mix things up a little bit. And let's have a look at the rankings while we're here. Obviously, Marlon Vettori training out at Tiger Muay Thai, I believe, at the moment. Definitely in Thailand, in Phuket. So he's putting in the work there to develop his Muay Thai. Of course, he's been in there with the very best himself. And so he's trying to close those gaps. Obviously, you've got Derek Brunson in there, again, late towards the latter part of the stages, like Jared Cannonier tonight. You've got Paulo Costa. And then, obviously, you've got the new guys coming up in Roman Dolidze, who got that fantastic win over Jack Manson. You've got Dricus du Plessis, who beat Darren Till last week. So it's an interesting division to be at. Had Adesanya remained champion, it's a very lackluster division because there's not much room for a new challenger or fresh matchup because he's beaten everyone below him. We'd be looking at Sean Strickland. If Adesanya was champion tonight and Sean Strickland wins, he'd probably be next in line for a title. Just to the nature of the business, and being the only one available there that I can see, other than maybe Derek Brunson, but I don't think Brunson is quite warranting a title shot just yet. And of course, he got flatlined by Adesanya at UFC 230. So it is an interesting division. Obviously, you want to see the likes of Darren Till and Gastelum return to where they was. Imavov, of course, is coming up. It's a very good division to be excited for at the moment. But tonight's fight is an interesting one. It's one of those ones that could go 5 rounds. It could get quite boring and monotonous. But I think it could also become a war. And I think if it becomes a war, it's because Cannonier has done a lot of work. And I think Cannonier has more tools on his side to be able to beat Sean Strickland. And it looks like Sean Strickland had quite a tough weight cut also. So how has that, prepared him for tonight? But I do edge it towards Jared Cannonier. Let's have a look at the teletape. 15-6 against 25-4. 5'11" for Cannonier, which is crazy considering he thought up at heavyweight. He's not the tallest heavyweight. And he has come down to middleweight. Looked fantastic. Kept hold of that physique. Kept hold of that punching power. And kept hold of that strength. So he's been an absolute animal in this division and been absolutely class to watch. Of course, he's got a 1-inch reach advantage. And of course, he's got 7 years on Sean Strickland. So maybe that's maybe that's a positivity within the experience and the life experience, but maybe it's more miles on the clock, etc. Albeit Sean Strickland has had more professional fights at 29, his 30th walk tonight, whereas this is only 22nd walk for Jared Cannonier. So it's a really interesting battle. Obviously, we know what Sean Strickland does. He's a good boxer. He's got some good hands. He's a tough competitor. The fact that Sean Strickland was the first man to knock him out since 2018. It shows a lot, and the work he's done against Uriah Hall, Christoph Jotko, Brandon Allen, Jack Marshman. He was in there with some very good fighters. Of course, other than maybe Uriah Hall, maybe not top 10, top 15 caliber. Although I believe Jotko and Allen have all had stints, maybe getting into that top 15 or being very close. Obviously, the Jack and Manson one was not the fight he was originally meant to have. I believe he was meant to fight Kevin Holland, if I'm correct. Luke Rockhold. I thought that fight was maybe with Jack Manson was maybe a short notice bout, but obviously he got a split decision win there. So that was his sort of first top competitor that he beat, especially a top 10 guy. Jack Manson's been in the top 10 for 2 or 3 or 4 years now. And then he obviously got in there with Alex Pereira. So he's not really been tested at the top level. And I think that might be his undoing tonight because Cannonier has been in there with the Whittakers, as we've already mentioned. He's been in there with the Brunson, the Gastelums, Jack Manson. He's been in there with more elite competition. I think that's going to fare him well in his work tonight. And I think he gets the job done within 2 or 3 rounds. I think he finishes Sean Strickland. Personally, I think Sean Strickland just hasn't got quite enough in there to beat Cannonier. Although if he lands on Cannonier, it'll be interesting to see because again, he does punch quite well. He's got a good punch on him, and he has got a tough mentality to stay in the fight at all times. But yeah, my prediction is Jared Cannonier within inside 3 rounds. So let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that moves on nicely to Arman Tsarukyan versus Damir Ismagulov. Now, whoever wins tonight is going to get titled and and named and paired against Paddy Pimblett on social media and outlets alike. I think a lot of people would want to see that fight. Well, would want to see that fight for obvious reasons. I think these two, Paddy Pimblett, as I mentioned on the recap, he's not ready for the top 15. I don't think he's even ready for the top 20 right now, and that's okay. We don't have to villainize him for it. We don't have to say, he's being protected by the UFC. We just need to. We've seen where his level is at with the Jared Gordon fight. So leave him there for a little while. He's only 27 years of age. We don't need to burn that bridge just yet. Otherwise, I mentioned, burn it. If you want to burn it with Conor. But don't burn it, where you don't get a good return for the UFC. But Tsarukyan, of course, and Damir Ismagulov. Obviously, Tsarukyan's last performance was a unanimous decision loss to Mateusz Gamrot, who, is coming up in this division very, very strongly. He had a rough ride out. The last performance he had, I believe, against RDA, was it? Or Fizayev, one of those two. I can't remember off the top of my head. But, he's someone I think of highly in this division. Prior to that, he beat Alvarez, Giagos, Matt Fradola, Dali Ramos, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, who just became champion with the PFL. And then his previous loss was in the Makhachev. So, his what? 2 of the 3 losses have been against, the now champion and someone who has been a champion in another organization at KSW, and someone who's, comfortably top 8 in his division. For Tsarukyan at 26 years of age, again, he's clearly ahead of Paddy, both skill-wise, and at his age. Although, maybe he tails off a little sooner than Paddy does. We don't know. But you'd expect a fantastic fight tonight, and it's a good co-main event. It's a shame it hasn't got a bigger crowd, because I think this fight deserves it. But, yeah, Tsarukyan's on incredible form, despite coming to that loss at Gamrot. I'm sure he would have learned a lot from that. Obviously, Ismagulov, his last one was a split decision win against Guram Kutaladze. An interesting one there. Of course, he beat Rafa Alves, Thiago Moises, Joel Alvarez, Alex Gorges. So he's been the distance a lot. In fact, he's been the distance in his last 5 fights, of course. And even in grappling, he's been the distance in that also against our man Osmanov. So he's very durable. Obviously, he has got a good style. And it's going to be an incredible fight. The fact that this is a top 15 fight, not a top 10 fight, that it could have been in maybe 2-3 years. Commendments to the UFC for putting this fight forward. Again, fantastic fight. Do I think Tsarukyan's got enough to beat him? Absolutely. I think this could potentially be fight of the night or performance of the night for sure. It's one of those fights that when you look deeper into, maybe if you're scrolling through Tapology or the UFC card tonight, you might not pick it up straight away, but when you start digging deeper underneath it, it's actually an incredible fight. And I think Tsarukyan gets the job done. You've got Amir Abalzi versus Alessandro Costa, 15-1 against 12-2. That's in the flyweight division. The flyweight division is absolutely caught fire at the moment, hasn't it? The fact that you've got Mohamed Mokaev there not being able to get a fight yet. You've got Matt Schnell. You've got Machaus Nicolau. Of course, obviously next month you've got the title fight between Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. It's unfortunate to see where Askarov is at the moment. Of course, he's got his issues, which meant he's out of competition for the minute. But obviously, you've got Kaikara France, etc. It's a really thriving division. Whereas 3 years ago, we was looking at it getting potentially cut, and that would have been the worst decision the UFC would have made, or one of the worst at least, in a long time. And I'm glad that they kept it. I'm glad they allowed this division to thrive. Because it's given us some of the best fights over the last 2-3 years now. Especially with the removal of Demetrius Johnson and obviously Henry Cejudo has lit a fire on under this division. So Abalzi takes on Costa. You'd imagine the winner might get the Mohamed Mokaev fight, perhaps. We don't know. But that'd be interesting for sure. Alex Caceres versus Julian Erosa, again a good fight in the 145-pounder division. Again, back to the lightweight division. Drew Dober versus Bobby Green. Obviously, Bobby Green coming back from suspension for DAGA, I believe. And he's been very honest and open about it. He said he messed up. He bought something over the counter in Walmart or Asda over in the UK. And, he didn't know that it was a banned substance in that particular product. And he's been very honest and quite, you believe that honesty that comes from him. Of course, sometimes you can see maybe through the cracks of someone's argument. But I think he made a genuine, honest mistake, and he's lost 6 months of his career. But he's going to come back tonight. And Drew Dober's been very fantastic as well. I saw his media day where he was very sort of humble towards Bobby Green, accepting that apology and accepting that sort of message that Bobby Green put out on his media day. And it's going to be a fantastic fight again, similar to Sorokin versus Ismagulov. This has potential to be fight night. Of course, Bobby Green, of course, didn't look great against Islam Makhachev, but of course it was a short notice fight, and Makhachev, we know what he's about now. So coming off that loss, it hasn't really harmed him any much. Of course, he beat Nasrat Haqparast before that. Got a win over Ali Quinta. Obviously, he's lost to Fizayev, so he's lost to two of the best in this division. He lost to Thiago Moises, but he's got some good wins under his belt, and also at 36 years of age, he should be in the prime of his career. Obviously, Drew Dober, fantastic fighter, coming off wins against Terence McKinney and Rafael Alves himself. Again, he's lost to the very best in this division, Makhachev and Brad Riddell. Got wins over Nasrat Haqparast himself and Alexander Hernandez. Lost to Benil Dariush, Olivia Ovin Mercier, of course. So again, the people he's lost to are very credible opponents, and this has got the potential to be a good fight and a potential fight of the night, and it's got a good place on the card, on that main card. I'm quite surprised it's not the featured prelim mate, because that's a fight that potentially go off and get some more subscriptions potentially. Cody Brundage against Mikhail Electric, of course. Electric, 17-5 in this division. Has been for a rough time in this period in his career. Of course, he went for a point where he lost to OSP, Jimmy Crute, lost to Dustin Jacoby, but he's back on winning ways. Of course, he beat Sam Alvey in June, which obviously gave Sam Alvey his walking papers, unfortunately. But he's 3-3 in his last 6. And he's someone I think of highly, but he has the tendency to not turn up on the night, and maybe he's one of those fighters that doesn't enjoy fighting in front of no crowds as much. Maybe he needs that little bit of adrenaline, that little bit of buzz to get the best out of him. But he's only 27 years of age. But again, if you compare it to Dricus du Plessis and Darren Till, he's a little bit below those two. Although him versus Darren Till would be an interesting fight. It would be very interesting, in fact. And obviously, Modestas Blakowska, who he beat, is now fighting for the light heavyweight title on Cage Warriors on New Year's Eve, of course, in London. And that's going to be a very interesting fight in itself. But yes, I think, it's a good fight for me. A good fight for the UFC Europe fans and the Polish fans. Of course, they got their heart somewhat broken last week with Jan Blachowicz, so a little bit of redemption for them. Cheyenne Felicissimus is coming up against Corey McKenna. Of course, Corey McKenna, one of the youngest stars in the UFC, one of the rising prospects in the UFC. Only 23 years of age now. Corey McKenna, training out, of course, at Team Alpha Male. Such a brave move for such a young competitor to go out to America and really, jump, head first into this world and train at Team Alpha Male is a fantastic gym. But to do that at such a young age, obviously growing up in Wales, etc. There's a lot of respect for her. Of course, former Cage Warriors strawweight champion herself, and she's coming off that win against Miranda Granger, where she, got a good Von Flue choke. Obviously, since the Contender Series, she went 2-1 winner Kay Hansen prior to that loss, and she's in a very good spot, and she's up against Cheyenne Felicissimus, who's a very gritty competitor, isn't she? I remember her fight, I think it was against maybe Montserrat Ruiz, where it was quite fiery in the octagon. Lots of words spoken, maybe a spitting thing, if I remember. I can't remember if that was that fight. But since then, she's put 2 wins together anyhow. So she's on a good run of form. And again, she also was on the Contender Series in that year. Formerly Cheyenne Byers, of course. Both her and JP won contracts, I believe, that year. But again, a good fight. Again, it's high up on the card, which shows you a lot about what where the UFC see these two, both 7-2. So a good win for them is a good end and a good build up to 2023. And I'm hoping Corey gets a win and we see her in that London card, because she should be fighting on home turf. And she didn't have a great performance on home turf, if I remember, at UFC London against Elise Reed, who lost the split decision back in March. So it'd be nice to see her get back onto winning ways and right that wrong at UFC 286 in London. Jake Matthews against Matt Semmelsberger, fantastic fight at 170. Saeed Nurmagomedov against Saeed Yakub. Kakramanov, again, in the bantamweight division, personally one of my favourite divisions in the whole of sport at the moment. Is the bantamweight division is kicking off in all organizations. That's a fantastic fight. Obviously, you got Machate versus Rafa Garcia in the 155-pound division, 9-1. Brian Battle, obviously the Ultimate Fighter, winner of last year, coming through against Renat Vakhradinov. That's in the 170-pound division, of course. Brian Battle recently moved down to 170. David Dvorak against Manel Kape. Cracking fight. Manel Kape, former Rising champion. Dvorak. No, again, these two will be closely watched by Mohamed Mokayev as potential opponents to that London card. So he's got 4 tonight they could potentially pick out. And that would be a good turnaround for either of those, especially if they get a quick finish. But Manel Kape, I'm a big fan of since he made his move into the UFC from Rising. Of course, he had a rough period to start with 2 back-to-back losses against Pantoja and Nicolau. But they're top 3, top 4 opponents now. Nicolau probably 1 win away from a title shot. Pantoja, similar sort of area there also. And I thought the split decision loss was a bit rough on him. But he's got back in the win column against Oli Osborne and Zagos Simagulov, 2 finishes. Remember that flying knee. And of course, he's coming up against Dvorak tonight, which is a very tough competitor. He was 20-4, comes to the loss against Nicolau himself. But again, fantastic fighter. And a very interesting fight to watch for all involved. And then you've got Sergey Morozov versus Johnny Newsom, which probably has kicked off now already. So again, good night fights. It's a shame that we're back in the Apex. This would have been perfect for an Orlando or a Jacksonville, etc. Especially the likes of Dvorak versus Kape. Said Nurmagomedov could have been on that card last week. Drew Dober, Bobby Green could have been on the card last week. Sarukian, Magomedov, of course, the main event could have all been on that pay-per-view card last week. But again, good card nonetheless. An enjoyable night of fights. Let us know where you're watching from. Give us your predictions in the comments down below. Are you Jared Cannonier or Sean Strickland tonight? Make sure to hit that follow button if you're watching on Facebook, or subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And I'll see you guys all on the next video.